Good afternoon, dear students, dear faculty members, dear guests and friends of the American University Kiev. Welcome to yet another exceptional session of the so-called AUK Talks, which over the last year and a half have become the signature online and offline event for our educational institution to invite the leading, the top world leaders in the fields of diplomacy, politics, military affairs, and academia. Tonight, it is my distinct privilege to welcome, actually, for the second time, General Chris Badia, who is the Deputy Supreme Allied Command Transformation, one of the two strategic headquarters that NATO has, that is located in Norfolk, Virginia. General Badia has had a very distinguished career with the German military. He joined the German Air Force back in 1984, and then he was assigned to various fighter wings, and he's a fighter pilot, and has spent many years in that field. He has also gone through the Commanding General Staff Officers College of the Federal Armed Forces in Germany. And after the academy, his connection, so to speak, with NATO began when he was appointed to be the personal assistant to the commander and the DCOM of the Allied Air Forces Northern Europe in the Ramstein. Over the years, General Badia has also worked for the German Ministry of Defense in Berlin, and has held really important operational positions, also working for politicians in Germany. Since July the 7th, 2022, General Badia, as I mentioned, was appointed as the Deputy Supreme Allied Commander Transformation, or the DSAC-T, as is known within the NATO system in Norfolk, Virginia. So again, this is the second time General Badia has generously agreed to talk to us, to our students, to our friends, our colleagues. So with this, Chris, welcome. Thank you for your time. Thank you for your willingness to support American University Kiev. We spoke, you and I spoke almost exactly a year ago, which was 6 months after the NATO strategic concept was published. So we were discussing the evolution of NATO. So to start the discussion, what in your view has changed within that 1 year in terms of how NATO is moving along toward the goals that were set in the strategic concept, and of course, where we're standing in terms of the situation with Ukraine. How does NATO assess the past 1 year in terms of the lessons learned from the war?
Yeah, Mark, thank you very much for your kind introduction, and good afternoon to everyone in Kiev, and good morning from the US. As always, more than happy to support the university and talking to you. And let me get right away to it. As you said, what are the strategic challenges? What are the lessons identified, learned when it comes to great power competition? What we see, what has changed? Are we still on the right track? But not only that, looking at hybrid warfare and also the challenges that are always seen below the threshold of war, if you will, because this all comes together and this is what we have to prepare for. So you said it, Mark, already, our headquarters, one of the two strategic headquarters, and I always like to say we are the headquarters that really has a task to think the future, because mid and long term, this is what we do. And the 5 tasks my headquarters mainly pursues is, just for the audience to get a better understanding, it's the warfare development overall. So this means, what does the future hold for us? How do we see the development of the security environment overall, and how do we counter it, and how do we prepare for that? And out of that, and this is the second important thing, is because it's what capabilities do we foresee, what's needed, what is NATO on a common funded basis, what do we need to do, and at the same time, it's the 31 allies we are having in close discussions where the capability development overall goes. And with that, as you all can understand, training, exercise, simulation, because you need to have a good feeling for that. And last but not least, and this is also with Ukraine, cooperative security through partnership. So partnership is for us also quite a big player overall. And let me start by three remarks I would like to make up front, because number one, and this is also something I always would like you to take into account when you go forward, I always use the saying, the urgent always wins over the importance. What do I mean by that? If you don't have that in mind, you normally go always for the urgent things, which is right now, it's the war in Ukraine, it's the conflict in Israel. Everything is urgent and needs to be taken care of, no doubt about that. But the importance is what happens after tomorrow, what happens in 10 days, what happens in 2 years, what happens in 20 years. This is the important thing. Because if you don't follow that, then I come back to that, you're always preparing for conflict and war of yesterday. And this is really important what on the way forward, how we need to consider that. The second remark I would like to make, and I mean, Ukraine just shows it, lessons identified and learned, it's all about capabilities. Okay, at the end of the day, by everything you do, you need to have tangible capabilities in order to counter. And this is what people have to keep in mind. And the third remark I would like to make is also capabilities is one thing when you go into conflict and you try to counter, but at the same time, it's the readiness of your forces, and you really have to think about ready for what, ready when, and what needs to be ready. So those are the categories overall. I just would like to make three more remarks, also taken out of the lessons identified we had so far as we take it forward. And Mark, you mentioned it, of course, for us, the foundation on the way forward is all the results we have out of the Madrid and then acknowledged by the Vilnius summit. So this is the strategic concept of NATO. And also for the audience, one of the most important things, and I always stress that, it's deterrence, because we have the mission on collective defense, which is deterrence and defense. But I mean, we see it, what happens if deterrence fails, because then you go to war. And the cost of war is in nothing comparable as what it would cost to have the right deterrence. So this is something we might discuss at the end as well, how we see that. And this is where a lot of work, also our lessons identified, goes into how to deter overall, and with all the aspects of deterrence, how do you deter in order to really get the mission done as it's expected from us. Then crisis management, of course, and as I said, cooperative security through partnership. And just for the audience as well, NATO, as you all know, has 31 members, but we are in close partnership with 36 nations. So we have more partners than we have allies. And there you see how that all fits together in order to really create an environment of security overall and have a better understanding on the way forward. And let me say that also, because it becomes more and more clear to everyone, we, NATO and the military, we are the military instrument of power. NATO has one instrument, this is the military. But there are so many other instruments of power out there. And the understanding we are having is that we have to fit clearly into the instruments of power overall, in order then it comes back to deter, to be there and deter in a way that would make our area of responsibility, or everything is NATO is about, much safer. So having said that, the question then really is, for whom are we preparing and where are we going? And this is what I just said. When it comes to deterrence and collective defense, of course, our area of responsibility is the Euro-Atlantic area right now, with the perspective we're having. It's a clear view to the east, and it's clearly that we look at Russia, and Russia is a main threat to all of us. And this is, of course, this is a given right now, and this is how we have to be prepared for. And let me say that as well, as of course, as sad as it is that the war started, and a lot of people thought, well, we maybe deterrence will hold, and we could convince Russia not to attack. It did not happen. But nevertheless, we saw that when it came back to 2014, we saw it, what happened in Syria. So, you know, we have a broader understanding of what Russia's capabilities are, and or where they thought they would go. And unfortunately, as I said, it came to war, which a lot of people in Europe thought it would not happen. So, but nevertheless, Russia is the main threat for us. This is what we are preparing for, and this is where we look into where the capabilities overall need to be countered against it. So from that coming as well, what the understanding is, and also a lesson identified, because in the former times, NATO and the West sometimes thought, well, we have a monopoly on cutting-edge technology. This is something that over the years it has deteriorated, and this is where everybody has to understand when it comes to proliferation of technologies, especially when it comes to sensing, precision-guided munition. And we see what is ongoing with Russia, and now with the consequences we are facing. At the same time, we have another big competitor, which is China. So at the same time, while we try to understand and fully counter Russia, we need to understand China in the same way, be it economically or be it militarily wise. And you can see that the strategic concept has taken that already into account, how we counter and how we foresee what's going on in China. But it's not only that. In order to have a 360-degree full understanding what the challenges are in the future, it's not only those two big nations. Just look at what's happening with the BRIC states, what the developments are, where are they going? Look at where the African continent is, how the influence of the African continent is. So with all that, it's really the combination and the challenges they present. They are not the same, but you have to look at it at once in order to understand and be prepared for. So in having said that, from NATO's perspective, why do we, of course, need to understand that? Because it doesn't matter if you look at the Arctic, where you might have conflict, even looking down to Africa, or you look towards the east. So there you see it's a broad variety of challenges you're having. And it's, of course, the way we prepare, it might be not obvious always to people that a systemic war or nuclear escalation might happen, but it remains probable. This is what we need to be prepared for, and this is the way NATO overall, out of the lessons identified and learned, how we go forward. I said that hybrid warfare at the same time, because it's most of the time below the threshold of war. This is where your opponents try more often to infiltrate, to attack, and to gain advantage overall. And this is where most of the opponents, how we see it, like to be in the field of that. And of course, terror. We see that all over, and this is what we need to be prepared for at the same time. Influenced by all by it migration, urbanization, competition for resources, climate change. And there you see, if you take all those factors into account, there you see what the challenges are of the 21st century and going on, and how you counter that. And this is what my headquarters thinks about. This is how we go forward and think about how we prepare ourselves. And let me just say that as well. How do we be prepared overall? Because now we see, with the license identified and learned as well, we have to be prepared for full war. If you are prepared for that, then the other missions you have below the threshold of war, crisis response, crisis management, you will be able to manage that as well. But the most important thing is, and this is really where we have to rethink everything, where it's like discussions are ongoing. This is a new situation overall, and this is how we have to go forward. So in summing up, the overall situation here is, so I get asked, well, in your view, what's the difference to the past? You know, we had the Cold War. What did you do there? What's the difference to that? Well, I may say that if I look at it and look at our adversaries and competitors out there, they challenge us nowadays simultaneously across, and that's the important thing, borders, regions, domains, and across different levels of power. So they have everything in there. So therefore, I always like to say, it's not Afghanistan or Mali or Ukraine. No, it's all of them. And this is what you really have to be prepared for in order to be in competition, be crisis and conflict at the same time, and be able to cope with that. This is the new quality NATO is facing. And this is really where we need to develop our capacity and readiness to constantly shape and contest to the advantage and prevent conflict wherever possible. And the next step to that as well is, and this goes from people's mind out of space. So you see, there are no boundaries anymore. And this is really the new quality and the new challenges we are facing, that And the perfect example, and that, I mean, sadly, the perfect example right now is what we see in the Ukraine, how Russia attacks across all the domains and all everything they do there, and we see all instruments of power with that. And this is the dangerous things we're seeing, and this is what we have to prepare for. So the question for the audience and for us also is as well, I just explained to you what we see, but the question is, so what? What are we doing about it? So really what changes and what has changed this in NATO is that the way we try to understand conflict in the future is about 5 domains. What do I mean by that? The 5 domains are air, land, sea, cyber, and space. If you go back to former days, most of the time it was air, land, and sea. So military is used to that. It's a home turf, if I may say so. But this is really what is the new quality, and we call it the multi-domain operations. We see that lessons identified as well in Ukraine, how this is done, especially with the 2 new domains, cyber and space, which a real difference is cyber and space is more civil dominated. You know that, take Starlink or whatever you see. So this is also something where we go into and define what the new coalitions are. What's the coordination with the civil side? What are contracts with the civil side? Because we fully understand, especially when it comes to cyber and to space, you cannot possess, maintain, and operate all those capabilities from a military side of you. So the resilience aspect to this as well is how do you integrate the civil side with that and have assured access in order to have the capabilities needed overall. And please don't misunderstand what I just said. Multi-domain operations does not mean that the military takes control over everything. We know exactly where we are as a military instrument of power, where we say we need to orchestrate what owns to the or is owned to the military, but at the same time synchronize with the civil side. So on all domains, and this is where you gain your advantage over competitors or adversaries in the future, because resources are always limited. So this is a new way of thinking. This is how we drive it, and this is how we take it forward overall. And as I said that, and this is when we think about how do we materialize more advantage, because as I just said it, resources are limited. We have 31 nations, big, small, more defense budget, less defense budget, but all have the same challenge, is the resources, be it humans, be it the money, be it weapon systems overall. There is never enough. So with that, we really think about how do we strengthen cognitive superiority, for instance. So what's into people's mind? How do you make it more resistant? How do you come to better and faster decisions? Those are the kind of advantages we are thinking of as well in certain projects we are running to get and maintain an advantage. Resilience, the other big topic. How do you protect power in the future? And of course, as I said, it's this cross-domain command and control and all-domain defense. So those are the new qualities, and to a smaller scale, but this is exactly what we identify and see by all the different aspects we see in Ukraine, how the war is going and what the aspects are. And of course, it's always easier said when we say we need more, we need it faster, and we need it everywhere. But this is also a lesson identified. And this is what we see out of the Ukrainian war as well. Because from the intensity, you need more ammunition, you have a higher attrition, you need more unmanned systems. You know how it is, overall. When we say faster, when it comes to new technologies, AI, quantum computing, all those things you're taking into account, and of course understand better in order to have a faster decision cycle to get there. And coming back to those, the so what question as well is, because in simple military terms, it is, if you're in conflict, you need to have an information dominance, so you need to understand what happens, that you have all the information available you need in order to make the right decision, which leads into decision dominance. And then if you have that, then when it comes to engagement, be it lethal or non-lethal, this is where you then can take the right decision when you have the right capabilities available. So this is everything we look at, and once again, it's not one of them, it's all of them, and this is the new quality we think how we go into the future. The new quality with everything I just explained as well is, and how do we go into the future? This is under the term we investigating is, how does a future force look like? because it's not, and this is the same in the Ukraine, it's not the military force you have today in order to predict that. This is what I said. Important thing is what happens in 2 years, in 5 years, in 10 years. How does your force look like? And one thing everybody has to understand when we discuss and work on those issues, as I said before, your resources are almost the same. We know today the strengths of the military in Germany, the strengths of the military personnel in Italy, the strengths in France. They are most probably plus or minus around the same strengths, because you always can see that already in demographics, how you recruit people. So you have a pretty good understanding where it goes, which means weapon systems, structure, all those things stay more or less in the margins of the same quantity, if you will. So then the question here is really, how do you improve the quality of that? And this is where we come in, and this is where we come in with the new technology. As I said, how do I approach it with cognitive superiority? How do I come to faster decisions? How do I use the data out there? And I come to that because data, this is the new currency of the future. And this is what people really have to understand, how we take that forward. So information systems, because if you look, and it's still the same, if I just view what's happening in the Ukraine war, of course, it's the battle tank, it's artillery. But in the future, we will see that information systems become more and more valuable platforms overall. And this is where the change goes, and this is how we prepare for the future overall, and this is where our development goes. So having said that, we run it under the term of platform-centric versus data-centric. And this is definitely the big change we are seeing, how we go into the future. And which brings me back to what I just said. Information dominance, decision dominance, and then engagement dominance, everything is based on data. So there you see how it interacts and how we take that forward. And again, within the approach of a multi-domain operation about the 5 domains. And then you can understand and see already how we form, how we transform our capabilities, how we transform our forces overall for NATO, for the 31 nations we were working for into the future. And just by almost closing, just give you a few examples. It's of course information dominance, cyber and space, as I said, access, data security, secure access to that. The cognitive maneuvers really need to have a new thinking. So we do all those things already. When it comes to deceptions, there's surprise. So there are a lot of new aspects when you just look into the information dominance already. Decision dominance, we see that as well, and I always like to refer back what we see in Ukraine, command and control posts. How you do that? Where do you have your small headquarters? You know, in the past, everything was more in structured, well defended bunkers. And so nowadays, this is not the war of the future anymore. You are so vulnerable. So those lessons need to be taken forward. How do we set up command control in the future? How do we orchestrate the war in the future if we have to take on a war in the future? So this is something, and specialization of forces. This is when it comes to decision dominance overall. And then, of course, when it comes to the engagement dominance, also what we see nowadays, especially on the lethal side of it, because more standoff range and position, more persistence, more autonomy, more automation. So this is where we do overall a lot of investigation, a lot of studies for our nations, and of course development with industry in order to get those new quality capabilities in integrated air and missile defense, deep precision strike. I mean, all the topics we are discussing in Ukraine, everything you see, this is not that it's new to us, but of course, it's now much more urgent and becomes important in the future in order to go forward. And at the same time, we must not forget the non-lethal side. So human enhancement, how do you do that? Cognitive superiority, when it comes to how you enhance the thinking, the learning, reasoning, how you get more attention. So there are so many programs out there we're looking at in order to support our nations to that extent as well. Last but not least, by all I just explained, and as you can imagine, number one, 31 nations, how challenging it is. But you can compare a challenge also what we see in the Ukraine, because with all the support, all the different weapon systems you're getting, all the challenges you have with ammunition, because it comes down to harmonization, standardization, and being interoperable. So this is the other big challenge. Everything I just explained to you, where we try to understand the 360-degree big way forward, you always have to keep in mind, you have to do that for 31 nations. And there will be more nations joining NATO. And this is also something we also from the beginning onward look that this harmonization aspect is taken care of early on when it comes to that. And with that, and you know that also as good as I do and we do, is there will be no defense without defense industry. So the lessons identified and learned there as well is, don't forget your defense industry, because when you need it, it's too late. You need to be in closest contact. You need to have demand signals throughout, and they have to be with a sustained amount of contracts and production lines overall, that they are capable in case of ramping up the production, that they really can support you. Those are also, I mean, this is not new, but it's a surprise to a lot of people, and those are also lessons identified and learned. So in closing, the role my command has, which I just explained you overall, where we are going from the big concepts and the strategy, how we then break it down into multi-domain operations with all the aspects and the capabilities needed to that. This is what we do in warfare development, how we think that, and basically coming from all the conceptual aspects, then really down into the capability development. So we really translate all those results into the requirements we're going, and we have it's a so-called NATO planning process. This is where I bring 31 nations together. This is where all the requirements are in there. This is where we then target nations with capability targets, where we apportion that to them, and then 31 nations as a whole provide the capabilities in order to defend the NATO overall. And by closing, one thing is, if you don't be careful, and that's what I said, when it comes to the important things about life, don't plan on the war of yesterday. Always have all those things in mind to come forward. And the most important thing is, in order to do that, always try to successfully deter your adversary before it comes to war. With that, more than happy to discuss whatever you have on your mind. Thank you very much.
General Chris, thank you very much for this extremely comprehensive and also in-depth overview of the complexity that those 5 domains actually present for the NATO planning process. You know, as I was talking to my students before your lecture, I told them that the headquarters that you oversee is actually NATO's think headquarters, the headquarters that analyzes, that does the conceptual work. So this is obviously as important as, you know, applying all these concepts in operations. Also, thank you for talking about things like challenges like food security, because you know, Ukraine, as everyone knows, it has been directly affected, and along with Ukraine, also the countries of the global south. So that's probably something that will become part of the next iteration of the NATO planning process and the NATO doctrine in the future. As a matter of fact, next month we're going to hear from Dr. Benedetta Berti, the head of planning for the Secretary General, also a good friend and classmate. So we'll be asking about that process too. Now I'm gonna start grabbing questions, because there are so many of those. You know, asking you about NATO, about the things that you've spoken. You've actually kind of preempted some of those, but let's start with the NATO standards. So do new technological advancements influence the NATO standards? In what way? And then what do you see as the greatest security challenge today in terms of technological advancements? Which technological development poses the greatest challenge that's still unaddressed or uncountered to this day?
What I always explain it this way, because it's of utmost importance. Looking at new technology, how you incorporate it, and of course, will there be a change? A lot of people talking about game changers, and I'm always very careful what really is a game changer in capabilities. But having said that, most and foremost, what you must not forget is about 80 to 90% of the capabilities are fielded. So you might say it's fielded or it's already legacy. So as important as it is looking into new technologies, at the same time, you have to think about everything that's fielded and enable your fielded technology and capabilities in order to be capable when you come to operations. And if you then go within the overall domains, that everybody is fully capable using the capabilities fielded to the maximum extent. So number one for me is always the consolidation. So you need to consolidate what you have and also think through how you update it and then come into this modernization aspect. And if you have that, then you can take the innovation aspect with that. What do I mean by that? And I give you a classic example. When it comes to short-range air defense systems, so a lot of those systems are autonomous systems, and they were good for the past. In the future, if you are in a command and control environment, you have to have a full situational awareness, and each and every system needs to know what is flying in the air, what is going on, which is through technology. So you need to update the systems in a way that all those fielded systems are able to participate within the air war to a full extent. How do you do that? And now this is where it comes between traditional technology and new technology. Because now with AI, you can enable, because companies are capable of basically adding some software chips to the old systems, but enable the systems that they participate. So in the past, it was more, oh, you are outdated, you need to buy new systems. This is not the case anymore. It's rather than how do I update through new technology, through quantum computing, how we see it in the future, to get to much faster decisions and engagement cycles overall. This is something where we look. This is something that will change overall, because that's what I said before, and what we also see out of Ukraine war. It's not only the quality, it's also the quantity, or as we say, the mass matters again. And if mass matters again, you again have to look at the cost, because you have to bring the cost down at the same time. So this is why what was not so much the case in the past, because you had new programs, new systems, and then you went on. Nowadays, you think more about how do I update the systems I'm having in order to enable them to be able to participate in the most modern war you are having. One part. The other part is, as you just said, what are the new technology? And then I give you another example, it's hypersonic. The Ukraine people know exactly what it is, and because with hypersonic missiles coming, attacking, and I'm not giving a lecture now what really hypersonic is, because there is also a difference. It's not only the speed, it's how maneuverable certain things are, and with that. But those are new systems, but at the same time, I tell you, it's not a game changer. It's just something it developed on top of certain things, but nevertheless, very dangerous, and you get more and more vulnerable. So there you see, this is the complete span where we look at. And then, of course, when it comes to quantum computing, we are engaging with a lot of companies already preparing for it. So once quantum computing really is available and capable with all the algorithms behind it, and then it's not only in combat forces, it's on logistics, it's in weather forecast, cryptographics. So there are so many things in there. And that might change, of course, the approach to war. And this is coming back to standardization, where you need to be very careful. Number one, that you are interoperable, that you can talk and work with each other. And on the other hand, of course, proliferation, that those technologies are close hold on what you're developing.
Thank you, Chris. A very detailed, very insightful answer to challenges that are really beyond the grasp sometimes. I mean, especially hypersonics, and our Ukrainian audience, of course, are keenly aware as they suffer from this on a regular basis. Let's kind of turn the medal and look at the other side, the positive side, and talk about technology a little bit more. what technological advancement, what weapon system, in your opinion, could give Ukraine the competitive edge on the battlefield? General Zaluzhny recently spoke about this qualitative, the qualitative change that needs to happen. Our AUK president Dan Rice thinks cluster munitions, ATACMS with cluster munitions are the key, the silver bullet. Others may say it's the F-16s when it becomes available. What do you think would help the Ukrainians break the stalemate?
If I, the way I would approach it, thinking it through from space to ground, if you will, because from number one, what always needs to happen is you need to degrade, in this case, the Russian capabilities by denying already either a complete situational awareness, so that they get on an intel base that they have, that the picture they are having, you have to deteriorate that, you have to deny that. And of course, you can do that through space. And especially when it comes to electronic warfare, all those things, and their space capabilities are so sophisticated already. And that's number one, where I would say where we need to have a deeper look into what capabilities in space can be provided to deteriorate the Russian capabilities to get a proper situational awareness. With all intelligence aspects that are out there, and looking at that. And this is what we do as well, because when it comes to communication, when it comes to navigation, when it comes to reconnaissance, so you either have great capabilities in exploiting it, but at the same time in denying it. So this is number one, from thinking from a bigger picture down to the ground, how you would do that. Then of course, if you will, below space, this is the airspace. And this is what we see, and this is it's analog to what we think as well, because you need to have a strong defense. You need to have a strong air defense in order to be able to maneuver and set yourself up in a way you need it. So we are talking not anymore about air supremacy or air superiority, but in parts. If you need to maneuver, if you need to concentrate on new hotspots and things like that, you definitely need to have that. So number one, it's as we are supporting, and just using the example of Patriot, or as we did it with IRST, which we are delivering. But it's if you will, it's the architecture overall, how you build that, and as I said before, you need more. So, but if you have that, and with that, then having flying air defense, because flying air defense gives you the flexibility, you have the ground-based air defense, which you orchestrate and have a stable platform in order to defend. And the flying air defense, this is what my business is, this was in the past, this is where you create the flexibility with flying air defense. And this is, of course, everything you get on F-16s and so on and forth. This is where you get more flexibility, where you get more capabilities, and again, where you then achieve partly or in time air superiority when needed. And then it trickles down, because if you are safe from the top, this is what you need. Then, of course, you have much more flexibility on the ground, which, and this is also something where we see on deep precision strike. So it's not the artillery that goes 8 or 10 kilometers or 20 kilometers now, and you know exactly in Ukraine what we are talking about. If you look at the ATACMS, if you look at new ranges, because this is also where you need to deny the enemy already his flexibility in maneuver that you can attack early on. So if that just in general terms, how you think that through, and then you think the capability with it, and of course it comes to command and control, all the flexibility. And this is the other thing, and you must not forget that, enablement sustainment. So it's all the logistics behind it. It's the logistic chain. It's the support to that. And this is where a lot of things, and this is, of course, with all the support that's been given to Ukraine. When I talk to all the people, they are all aware of that. And this is, you need to see it as a complete package in order to do that. And with that, we are on that. And as you all know, we do the utmost to support wherever we can.
Well, thank you, of course, for mentioning sustainment, because quite often people don't think of the gigantic work behind supporting complex systems, especially F-16s. And with this, I'd like to kind of build up on what you said. You know, the realistic expectation these days is that Ukraine would probably receive about between 30 to 40 F-16 sometime next year. The Ukrainian pilots, you know, are learning faster, according to the reports, than others maybe. Where do you think those F-16s would make the most impact on the battlefield? You as an Air Force pilot, as a fighter pilot, where would you use them if you were in the shoes of?
Well, it's first of all the capability of the F-16s, and I don't want to go into too much details about that one, but it will definitely boost the defense capabilities, because this is and from the reports I'm seeing and what we see, what's happening over the battlefield, and the attacks you get from Russia, with all the capabilities, being from the radar, being from the weapons, being from the self-defense capabilities this aircraft has, it will improve overall dramatically to the positive way, especially with weapons. You have long-range weapons, because in the air defense business, the most important thing is that you have to have a greater range as your opponent has to attack him, because then you stay safe and you can attack him, and this is what we are there for. Then basically you eliminate him. So this is what it is, and this is what this aircraft definitely will bring to the fight. And as you said, definitely Ukrainian pilots are really experienced, but it will take also a few months until, because it's really working the weapon system overall, completely understanding. It's not, and for those who haven't flown a fighter aircraft, it's not about flying the airplane. F-16s and 5th generation aircraft, they do most of those things by themselves. It's really orchestrating the weapon system and bringing your weapons to bear in a superior way. This is the mentality. And this will be the challenge also for, as experienced as you are, but understanding your weapon system, you know, you need to become once with the weapon system. And then once you got that, you are superior and you will succeed.
And of course, as you rightly mentioned, the real art of war, in this case of modern warfare, is this joint forces operation where they're gonna use the Air Force in conjunction with ground forces, missiles, you know, and armor to form this armor fist, so to speak, that could penetrate through the Russian lines.
And maybe adding to that, just for the audience as well, this kind of weapon systems, the way they are developed, and as you just said, you know, being part in a complete system, a defense system, and the way the complexity, how you work in an air war, this system has so many subsystems that support already the pilot and the mission overall, and this is what makes the difference.
Yes, absolutely. And allow me to kind of lower the altitude from airplanes down to drones, because drones, as everyone has seen, is this is the you know, this is really the war of drones and long-range artillery. So the question here is, do you think it's realistic to see the time when military drones can be used effectively in the air against airplanes, against helicopters, maybe even become the predominant military force, using AI against airplanes, human-driven airplanes?
You know, I always would say never underestimate and always expect the unexpected. What do I mean by that? Yes, it will be possible, because as we've seen and proven with all the possibilities of new technology, it will happen. But then the question again is, how do you structure that? Because there is one thing you always need to keep in mind. It's the aspect of agility, how agile, and now coming back to a F-16 fighter aircraft, how it can maneuver in if you have a very volatile and complex arena, how you maneuver. The drones today are not capable of doing that, most of them. Almost all of them are not, because they have a different mission. But that does not mean that the development will not go there. When it comes to how which weapons you put on a drone, because you have those medium-sized drones, they can carry air-to-air weapons, and from that, so there are a lot of aspects to it. And my take is, by everything I see, if I look at an inventory of the future, I would say definitely 1/3 to 50% in the near future will become unmanned. You always will need manned aircraft for different types and roles as well, but it will be a clear mix, which brings me back to the point of mass. Mass matters, because this is where you can gain the advantage through drones. And the other aspect is, of course, the cost aspect.
Yes, and as we're seeing, these systems are becoming cheaper and cheaper, and
yes,
much more massively used on the battlefield. So you're absolutely right. Maybe within this decade, we may see them becoming a dominant force. One last question on technology, and then I want to move on to collective defense and building partnerships. Is NATO working on developing response activities to respond to AI unfriendly adversaries? So forces, powers that use artificial intelligence. What do we have in our arsenal? What are we kind of moving in that direction, recognizing the threat and trying to counter it in the future?
Well, number one is, when it comes to AI, I always explain the military world lives with AI already for a long time. It just has not been known that well. If I give you one example, if you look, because you have it, or the Ukrainians have it in the inventory now, if you look at the Patriot system, if you look at the modes, how the system can engage, and this is already for a long time. So you have automatic modes, autonomous modes, and there is a lot of AI behind it already. If you look into unmanned vehicles on the ground, a lot of AI in there. If you look at a lot of computer applications, a lot of AI in there. So that's number one. What I want to say is, we are used to AI. It was just not that present until this AI discussion started. And I understand everybody out there who says, well, we have to be careful because that AI doesn't overtake our lives and make decisions for us. Yeah, you're absolutely right. But you need to understand AI. And this is when it comes to complex aircraft, when it comes to a lot of complex automated things within an aircraft that's been done. So this is why you have, when you develop the aircraft, this is why you have a lot of experts and with all the engineers working on that with a clear understanding what needs to be retained to human beings and what can be automated done in order to support. So it's the well balance within there in order to do that. Because, and this is what you said, restricted to your opponents, the danger in there always is if you restrict too much, and if don't understand very well where your advantages are, you might degrade your own systems and your own capabilities overall. So really, it's a kind of how you balance that overall, number one. The other thing is, and I think we have to be very open and don't be, well, how do I say that? When it comes to AI and proliferation of AI, okay, do not be mistaken what the opponents already have, because our opponents, be it Russia or be it also our competitor of China, what they do not have is, they don't have the moral aspect, they don't have the legal aspect with that, and they don't have ethnic aspects with that. So the Western world, which is absolutely right to doing that, we're taking all those things into account, and then we restrict ourselves already when we develop certain things. Your opponents, most of the time, don't have that. They use new technologies to a maximum extent, and this is where you have to see. So being in belief or thinking that you could restrict something, or you could restrict proliferation, or that you could hinder your opponent of getting certain technology to his use, I'm always very cautious of believing that could happen, because then you get caught by surprise. So what do you do about it? This is the most important question, because this is where we work on already, where we develop counter systems. How do you counter certain AI possibilities when it comes to identification in the air or whatever? So there are so many aspects to that, but you can counter that. Okay, when it comes to cognitive superiority, laser pulsing, and all those things, how you influence human beings, how do you counter that? So for us, the question is, yes, understanding what you can do, but at the same time, how do you counter that? And then you are better prepared as just of thinking, well, I can make some kind of control, if it be it weapons or I control or proliferation. I think this is not well thought through if you think you can manage it through that.
And of course, by while trying to do that and counter those, we always recognize that AI develops exponentially. The power of computing. Yeah. So I would imagine NATO and NATO's forces would cooperate with civilian organizations, commercial companies, and others that are probably even much better and at the cutting edge of developing this technology. So I want to move from the technological kind of questions to the collective defense and partnership. But before that, I saw that we have Colonel Gennady Kovalenko among the participants here, who used to work with you. So he's sending his best regards. He's a good friend too.
All the best to him. Good to hear from him. And all the best.
Absolutely. So there's a great question on the important interactions and partnerships with other countries or international organizations. You have just returned from Madrid from a conference on exactly this topic, organized by your brilliant Dr. Vlasto Zekulic, there, a good friend too. So which partnerships are the most critical to achieving NATO's strategic goals, in your opinion?
Well, answering the question in the way you asked it, which are the most important ones or which are the most critical ones, I always would answer, it's all of them. Okay. So, and as I said before, and I explain you what I mean with that. Because as I told you before, we are 31 allied nations, 36 partners, and we are also in very close coordination with international organizations. So with that, we have partners from the Euro-Atlantic area. We have partners from the Mediterranean area. We have partners from the Gulf area overall. And of course, if you will, worldwide, be it New Zealand, be it Australia, be it Japan. We have good contacts down there as well. And you heard about those discussions ongoing. Should NATO open up a liaison office down in Japan? So you see, it's from worldwide and coming closer. So, and if you would ask me, could you prioritize what's more important? And I would tell you no, because they are all as important. And why? Because NATO's approach is 360. So if you see that NATO is acting regionally, if you will, Euro-Atlantic, but think globally. Because if you don't think globally, if you don't understand the world, if you don't understand the challenges, then you will not be able to prepare. What do I mean by that? And you just refer to that, to the P360, as we call it, symposium, as we had last week in Madrid. The most important thing for me is, it's not what I have to say and what I have to explain from a NATO perspective. It's much more important to me to listen what the partners have to say. And we had discussions, for instance, we had an analyst from the African Union. How analysts from the African Union, how do they see and perceive NATO? And you can imagine it's a total different view as we would think how it should be viewed, because we see it with a European lens. But looking at Europe and looking at NATO through an African lens, this is the most important thing. The same thing is, and I can tell you that as well, we had also the Indo-Pacific. So we had a more or less Indo-Pacific Asian view, because if you look at the European landscape of media or the US landscape of media, China is quite a topic, and the way China is presented, it's not the way it's perceived from the region in the Indo-Pacific. So in concrete terms, what I learned there is, well, China is a competitor, but we right now we don't fear that China is posing a military threat to us. Just, you know, all those discussions. So, and this is what it's really about, is number one, partnership is about understanding each other, understanding how they see the world, and then through partnership, the other really important thing is, because we always try to make it win-win, is getting into the interoperability aspects overall. So, you know, wherever, and we had that, and I also say, unfortunately, in Afghanistan, because we know all how Afghanistan ended. But when I looked with the Australian partners we had there, for instance, it only was possible to work very closely with them because the interoperability was there. So there you see, it's on one hand, it's understanding each other. On the other hand, it's getting to a closer cooperation through interoperability.
Well, and here comes the question, you know, the opportunity rather to move to kind of include also the Ukrainian dimension, because people here are asking about interoperability between Ukraine and NATO in the future, and in particular military production, the military industry. So, you know, in your opinion, how Ukraine can contribute to NATO in the future with its production and industrial capacity? But let me also add to this another question. As you know, Rheinmetall has been talking, has promised to invest in Ukraine and start, you know, manufacturing, building armor. Other manufacturers, Bayraktar, the drones, the Turkish drones, and others have also joined. But do you think these facilities can be protected in the context of the war? I mean, is it realistic to expect that the air defense that Ukraine has or that can be supplied can actually support that production cycle?
Let me start by the last question you asked before I came to NATO, Ukraine and NATO standards. I would the way I would approach when it comes to, and it doesn't matter which company it is, they're coming to Ukraine and building a factory and building, but I always would approach it, and I'm sure you're doing that. That's a whole of state, whole of government issue, because we all have to be very careful. It's easily said, well, you know, a defense company comes and they bring their own air defense and they defend themselves. Well, it's sovereign country. It's Ukraine sovereignty. It is your call. It's your defense. So you are making all the calls and you setting the standards and the requirements, what must happen, and nothing else is the right way forward. So it needs to rest and it needs to stay within the Ukrainian government. So having said that, then of course the government can come forward and say, well, you know, I get supported with certain systems, or if the defense company comes forward and says, and by the way, we are also providing some air defense which we would be able to integrate into your air defense system. This then is a different talk, but I would be very cautious in the way it's being discussed. If it comes to sovereignty aspects and if it comes to defense aspects, it needs to be a Ukrainian whole of state approach in order to do that. So that's number one. And from there, of course, I mean, as I said, always expect the unexpected and never underestimate. Everything can be done. You know, we are human beings. We have rules and regulations, but they are man-made. So if you don't like them, change it. That's my approach to it. So, and from that, I would say, of course, if there are entrepreneurs coming and saying this is what it is, definitely welcome. Why? Because this is what we also see in the future with all the lessons identified and what we are seeing. I mean, when you think about and talk about reconstitution of Russia, what will be Russia's intention in the next 10 years? Definitely one thing you cannot say is they will not attack again or they will not try again. So you need and you have to be prepared for that, and the earlier the better, definitely to that. So having said that, if you build an ecosystem, because as we see, one nation by itself cannot stem it anymore. So it needs to be an ecosystem of nations coming forward with the right capabilities in supporting. And this comes back to what I said. It's not only about the weapon system, it's about enablement and sustainment when it comes, for instance, to munition. So having said that, absolutely welcome that industry goes out there and says, wherever I can build wherever I can manufacture, why not? And the last comment I'm making is, most important thing is interoperability, because and Ukrainians well know that 155mm shells on artillery. So if you want to discuss harmonization, standardization, interoperability, there you have the best example how you should do it in the future in order to prevent that you have challenges in the beginning.
Chris, that was, as usual, an extremely competent and profound answer. And really, it's a very, very complex problem. Our time is almost up, but I really want to ask you two questions before you close, if you don't mind. One is on Russia, the status of the Russian forces, how you assess them, how quickly you think, I mean, how many years could be projected that they may reconstitute themselves and become a threat again. So that's the first question. The second question is on the statement or the plan, rather, or the idea that the former NATO Secretary General Rasmussen has proposed recently, that Ukraine could join NATO, but the collective self-defense clause can be applied only to territories under the control of the government. In other words, the occupied territories would not be a part of NATO's security umbrella, so to speak. What is the kind of attitude within NATO, if you may share with us about this plan? How realistic is it from the military standpoint? So these are the two final questions.
Reconstitution on Russia, again, think the worst, think the unthinkable, and don't be caught by surprise. And what I tell you is, because, you know, with the former Soviet states, when you talk to them with all the experience they have, if you talk to Romania, if you talk to Bulgaria, if you talk to the Baltic states, they are the front line. If you talk to Poland, they are the frontline states, and they have a pretty clear view of what's happening. And for them, it's rather sooner than later. So the discussions that are out there, it's, you hear 2 to 6 years, sometimes you hear 10 years, but I rather go for the 2 years. Because, and I tell you also why, because if you look at it, the strategic forces, the nuclear forces, lots of the maritime forces, the ballistic missile forces. So there are a lot of forces, they are still fully intact. So you never know what you see. And this is where I come back and say, we have to do the utmost to really get the deterrence right. So my say is on that. I'm not telling you it's exactly that many years. I am saying as soon as possible, and always expect the unexpected. This is what we see, and this will be my take on that one. The other one, you know, it is a very highly political question, but my personal view and the way I see it, Ukraine will join NATO over time. The question now is, what are the conditions in order to do that? And this is what the discussion overall was as well. And this is really what you see, but it's more from a military, from a pure military term of thinking. Of course, it's, for me, is the forces I can take in, and the area I have to then basically, that's joining, and how do we defend that? And this has to be overall factored in the overall defense plan you have. But we are advising politicians, and everything has been said out there. And that's a question. I have a personal opinion, but you know, that doesn't count here on how you do that. But I'm deeply convinced Ukraine will join NATO, and it's a question or a question of timing.
Chris, thank you very much for your continuous support for Ukraine, for your candor, for your passion, for your hard work to making the alliance even stronger, and for bringing Ukraine as part of this Euro-Atlantic community. You see all the hearts, all the applause is flying. You're among our most popular, most beloved speakers. You're always welcome to join us.
Thank you very much.
One day when you're in Kiev, you know, traveling on an official business, and you have some time, please let me know. We would love to host you within the actual walls of our university on the banks of the Dnipro River.
Definitely will do that, and I hope it will become true sooner than later. And really let me close by saying, well, all the best to you. Stay healthy, stay safe. And I would like to close, of course, with Secretary General Stoltenberg's quote is, we support as long as it takes. Thank you very much. All the best to you.
Thank you, General. Thank you. Have a wonderful day.
All the best. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.